Welcome to Twilight Fables, where classic tales are reborn with a shiver. Tonight, we begin the tale of Mulan, not as the world remembers her, but as the spirits do. In this version, war is only the beginning, and legends are written not in ink, but in blood. There was something wrong with the moon. It hung low over the horizon, swollen and dull, a pale stone, bleeding rust-coloured light across the rooftops of Mulan's village. The elders called it the ghost moon, a rare omen that marked the turning of tides between the world of the living and that of the forgotten. On such nights, doors were barred with ash and salt, fires were left burning till dawn, and children were forbidden to speak the names of the dead. But in Mulan's home, silence was not for superstition, it was grief. Her father sat in the dark, wheezing in the glow of a dying lantern, the imperial summons trembling in his hands, ink on gold-threaded silk, a death sentence wrapped in formality. "You cannot go," Mulan said softly. He didn't answer. His fingers twitched like dry leaves. The sound of his breath rasping against damaged lungs filled the room. Her mother stood by the doorway, frozen. Even the wind outside seemed to avoid their house. "They know he's crippled," Mulan said. "They know he fought before. Why summon him now?" "There are no more sons," her mother whispered. "Only daughters." The room grew colder. That night, Mulan couldn't sleep. Outside, the mist crept low, carrying with it the scent of incense and something older, coppery and foul, like wet coins and old bones. She wandered to the family altar and lit a single stick of bitter black smoke. The scrolls bearing her ancestors' names curled in the heat. She knelt and pressed her forehead to the floor. "Help him," she whispered. "Help me." The shadows in the room stretched and shifted. A cold breath passed over her neck. The flame flickered sideways. Then she heard it, a whisper that did not come from her lips. "Blood for blood," it murmured. She spun around, heart racing. The room was empty, but her reflection in the mirror, tall and still in the corner, smiled back at her when she did not. In the morning, she made her choice. While her parents slept, Mulan went to the small burial hill behind the village, where her grandfather had once carved talismans. She dug through the earth until her hands bled, uncovering a weathered stone tablet with faded sigils. She pressed her palm to the top and spoke the words she remembered from forbidden scrolls. "Let the veil part and let them see me." Her breath turned to frost. A ripple passed through the air and the shadows deepened. A figure stepped from the mist behind the stone, a woman with no face, her body wrapped in black silk and bells made of bone. "Child of Fa," she hissed, though her mouth did not move. "You call us when the pact is broken." Mulan steadied her voice. "I ask for strength to protect my family." The spirit turned its blank face to the moon. "Then give what was once given. Bone for blade, name for shadow, soul for sword." Mulan nodded. The spirit reached out, and her hand passed through Mulan's chest. Something twisted, something left. She screamed, and the sound was swallowed by the fog. By nightfall, she was gone. In her father's armour, altered in secret, Mulan rode alone toward the mountains. The roads were empty. No travellers, no carts, no signs of life. Only rows of shrines with their candles snuffed out and offerings torn apart by unseen hands. She passed a procession of soldiers on the 5th day, but they weren't marching. They stood still in the road, motionless as stone, eyes wide and mouths open in silent screams. Their bodies were grey and brittle, as if they turned to ash while standing. The wind howled. Mulan looked away. She didn't speak to anyone until she reached the recruitment station. The commander there, a man with missing teeth and a third eye tattooed between his brows, looked her over. "You smell like the grave," he muttered. "I buried who I used to be," Mulan replied. "What's left is ready to serve." He grinned. "We'll see how long that lasts." That night, her dreams were full of blood, not spilled in war, but offered, bowls of it, ceremonial knives, a mountain altar soaked in red beneath a lightning-split sky. She stood at the centre, wearing a veil made of black feathers and silk, her face expressionless. A voice whispered again, "The gate must never open." She woke to find the mark on her chest glowing faintly, a sigil of spiralling threads, now embedded just above her heart. She wasn't alone in her tent. Something sat in the corner, watching. The figure in her tent did not breathe. It squatted low in the shadows, limbs long and wrong, like a man who had forgotten how to move like one. Where its face should have been was only a swirl of smoke and bone. Its head tilted as Mulan stared at it, paralysed. She could feel her heart hammering, but her body refused to act. Then it whispered, not in words, but in feeling, a sickness that filled her ears, a mouth and bones. "You carry the mark." She reached for her dagger. The thing vanished in a soundless blur, leaving behind the scent of scorched silk and rotted lotus. The glow on her chest faded. She stayed awake until dawn, gripping her weapon tight, unsure if it had been a dream. They moved out the next day. Mulan was placed in the 12th Battalion, a unit known for handling cursed territory. None of the soldiers spoke much, and none had surnames. Each had their own talisman, a scrap of red string, a bone whistle, a faded prayer, kept close at all times. Their captain was a gaunt woman named Anne, with a mouth stitched down one side and a spear wrapped in prayer cloth. "We do not bury the dead," she said when they reached the foot of the Yunshan Mountains. "We burn them quickly before they come back wearing different faces." Mulan said nothing, but her fingers tightened around her own weapon, a curved blade her grandfather had forged from iron found in a fallen star. Unnoticed. "Does it hum?" she asked quietly. Mulan blinked. "What?" "The blade. Does it hum when they're near?" She hadn't thought about it until now, but yes, there had been a low vibration the night before, a deep, resonant hum, like a distant drumbeat. Anne gave a grim nod. "Good. Then it will cut what others can't." Their first mission was a simple patrol, or so they were told. They found the village near dusk, or what was left of it. The homes were hollowed out, bones arranged in perfect spirals on the floors, doors nailed shut from the inside with blackened jade, and in the centre of the village stood a tree, only it wasn't a tree. It was a column of bodies, fused together, their mouths open in silent prayer, children at the top, elders near the roots. Their skin was pale as porcelain, and their eyes, All of them pointed up, toward the moon. One soldier vomited, another began to weep quietly. No one approached the tree, except Mulan. She walked forward, sword drawn, and stopped just short of the unnatural roots. The blade hummed louder here. She knelt and placed her hand against the ground. The soil whispered a name she had never heard before, or maybe had only ever heard in dreams. Xien-lu, the gate beneath. She stumbled back as the column shifted. The mouths began to move all at once, singing, "Open the door, open the door, open the door." Captain Anne gave the order. They lit the entire village in fire and didn't stop until the screams ended. They returned to camp in silence. That night, Anne approached Mulan's tent. "You knew," she said without preamble. "Before we saw it, you felt it." Mulan didn't lie. "Yes." "What are you?" "I'm not sure yet." Anne considered that. "You'll stay with me from now on." A week passed in blood and smoke. Villages emptied. Rivers ran black. Sometimes they fought enemy soldiers, but those soldiers didn't bleed red. Their wounds spat out sand, or moths, or ink. Sometimes the dead walked. Sometimes the living disappeared mid-sentence, their bodies collapsing like robes dropped by unseen hands. They kept marching, and every night Mulan dreamed of the same temple, circular, carved from obsidian, surrounded by ghost fires, and at its centre, a throne of antlers and bone. Someone sat on it. She could never see their face. On the 12th day, they encountered the silent host, a valley littered with motionless soldiers in ancient armour, eyes glowing faintly blue. "They do not move unless the wind does," Anne whispered. "We go around." But the wind did move, and they did. The silent host attacked without sound. No screams, no shouts, just the clashing of metal and the sickening crack of bone. Mulan fought like something not quite human. Her blade sang a keening wail, and the creatures burned wherever she cut them. Their bodies turned to steam, leaving behind no trace. Then one of them grabbed her arm and spoke. "You are the key." Its body shattered. She stood alone in the blood-soaked mud, the wind finally dead. They counted their dead. Out of 30, 12 remained, and stared at Mulan as the flames took the corpses. "You fought them before." "I haven't," Mulan replied, "but something in me remembers how." That night, she found a letter in her bedroll. No name, no seal, just a note. "The general watches you now. Do not trust his shadow." The sky bled light as they approached the Iron Spine fortress, a jagged scar in the mountains where the Empire's high command was said to reside. Tall walls of blackened stone towered over the mist, lined with arrow loops that oozed a slow, oily smoke. No banners flew, no horns sounded, and yet the gates opened as if expecting them. Captain Anne hesitated before entering. They say this place was built over a battlefield, so cursed the earth refused to grow grass for 100 years. Mulan said nothing, but her grip tightened on her sword. Inside, soldiers moved like clockwork, methodical, silent, unblinking. Their skin bore the dull sheen of lacquered wood, and their eyes reflected no light. Mulan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched by every surface, the stones, the torches, even the shadows. An officer greeted them with a stiff bow. He looked perfectly human until he smiled, revealing 2 rows of teeth. "You are expected." They were led through winding corridors, deeper into the mountain, each one colder than the last, until they entered the war chamber. There, at the head of a long table, carved from petrified bone, sat General Xien. His armour gleamed like obsidian, layered with scale-like plates etched in runes. His hair was ink black despite the years, and his face, unlined, perfect, unmoved, belonged more to a statue than a man. "You are F.A. Mulan," he said. His voice was neither cold nor warm, simply inevitable. "Yes, General. You've survived 5 engagements with the silent host. No scars, no madness. That makes you a curiosity." Mulan bowed slightly. "I serve the Empire." The general's eyes flicked to her mark, still faintly glowing beneath her collar. "Does the Empire serve you?" The question stunned her. She said nothing. He rose and dismissed the others with a gesture. Even Captain An hesitated before obeying. Alone, he approached Mulan. "I fought in the First War," he said, "long before you were born, when they first breached the gate beneath." Mulan stiffened. His smile was thin. "Yes, I see the knowledge stirring in your blood. The gate, the one who waits below. The pact your line broke when your ancestors betrayed the gods. I've seen it in dreams." "They are not dreams." He turned, lifting a lantern. Its light turned the chamber transparent, showing ghostly outline of runes etched into every wall, and dozens of sealed sarcophagi embedded within the stone. "My men die daily. I carve their souls into the walls. That is how I keep this fortress standing." Mulan stepped back. "You enslave them." "I bind them," he corrected, "to protect what remains of this world. You think I enjoy it?" He walked closer, shadows curling around his boots. "The gods you call myths are real, hungry and waking. Only sacrifice slows them." "Then we'll find another way," she said. He reached out and touched the sigil on her chest. "You are another way, the key, the last of the bloodline that once sealed them. You can end this, but you would not survive it." Mulan met his eyes. "Perhaps I'm not meant to." The room pulsed with cold. Shen studied her for a long moment, then handed her a scroll. "Take this. It is the first step. Go north. Find the oracle in the Crater of Echoes. She will tell you what I cannot." As she turned to leave, he said one final thing. "When you see your own corpse, do not scream. That is how they find you." They departed the next morning without fanfare. Captain An said nothing until they were miles from the fortress. "He touched you?" "Yes." "You saw the walls?" "I did," and nodded. "Then we move quickly." The Crater of Echoes wasn't marked on any map. It was not a place of roads or rivers, but of memory. Mulan knew the way without knowing how. Something deep in her blood guided her, a compass carved by ancient sin. They passed through valleys where time moved wrong. Rivers ran backward. Stars blinked out midday. At one point, they crossed a forest where every tree had a human face, and each one wept black tears. They lost another man there. No one spoke his name afterward. By the 6th night, Mulan began seeing herself. Not reflections, not shadows, other versions. One appeared across the fire, armour scorched, hair white, eyes gone. She said nothing, only watched. Another stood in a pool of blood, whispering to a severed head in her hands. And one, a third, crawled from Mulan's own mouth in a dream and whispered, "We all fail, except one. Let it be you." They reached the crater of echoes as the moon vanished entirely, a dark sky with no stars, only flickering auroras that rippled in green and blue like the scales of a serpent. The crater itself was a spiral gouged into the earth, lined with jagged stone and echoing voices that were not their own. The oracle lived in its heart. She was blind, her eyes sewn shut with red thread. Her body was translucent, veined with light like cracked porcelain. "I waited for you, daughter of betrayal," she rasped. "I have waited through 1,000 screams." Mulan stepped forward. "Tell me how to stop them." "You cannot stop gods," the oracle said, "but you can starve them, seal them, chain them, with the mirror right." "What is it?" "You must enter the veil, find your true reflection, and kill it before it kills you." Anne moved to protest, but the oracle held up a hand. "Her soul is split already. The longer she waits, the less human she becomes." Mulan nodded once. "I'm ready." The oracle gave her 3 items: a mirror of polished obsidian, a bone needle, a vial of her own blood, collected while she slept. Then she drew a circle of salt and ash and spoke in a dead language. "Enter the dark, face the other." Mulan stepped into the circle, clutching the mirror. The world fell away. There was no up or down in the mirror realm. Mulan fell through silence, through liquid shadows, through herself. Then suddenly, she stood in a field of glass. Each blade of grass was a shard, razor-edged, humming softly, and the sky above her was cracked obsidian, reflecting 1,000 versions of her face. Some wept, some bled, one screamed without sound. The ground quaked beneath her. Something was coming. She turned to see herself. But not quite. This Mulan was hollow. Her armour was bleached bone, her eyes pits of darkness, and her movements disjointed, like a puppet hung on torn strings. It smiled. "You've been wasting time," the doppelganger said, "fooling yourself. You're not here to save anyone. I'm here to stop what's coming. No, you're here to take my place." She held up the same sword, but it was rotting, rusted, dripping black ichor. "You can't seal the gate while you're still whole. You must become what I am." Mulan raised her blade. The reflection moved like lightning. They clashed. Steel met steel, but the sounds were wrong, like bones snapping underwater, like bells chiming in reverse. Mulan fought hard, but the mirror Mulan was faster, stronger. She anticipated her every move, because she was her. Pain bloomed as the doppelganger's blade grazed her cheek, drawing a ribbon of red. "You bleed so easily," the reflection sneered. "And yet you think you're the one meant to finish this." Mulan spat blood and parried a downward strike. "If you were strong enough, you wouldn't still be trapped in here." The doppelganger screamed, a sound that shattered the glass grass and split the sky. From the cracks above, memories rained down. her father coughing blood on a cold floor, a girl wrapped in silk, drowning beneath a frozen river, a battlefield of screaming children, devoured by shadows with emperors' crowns. Each memory pierced her skin like needles, her legs buckled. I remember everything, her double said, every life, every death. I am the truth, you are only delay. Mulan, shaking, reached for the mirror at her belt. You forgot one thing. She held it up, not to her reflection, but to the sky. The cracked heavens twisted. The mirror caught something, light, a sliver, a thread. From it, a voice, her mother's. You are not what came before. You are what ends it. Mulan plunged the bone needle into her own heart. She awoke, gasping, soaked in cold sweat, the oracle's chant still ringing in her ears. Captain Ahn knelt nearby, blade drawn. She was screaming. Ahn said, You both were. Mulan sat up slowly. The sigil on her chest had changed. No longer a spiral, it now resembled an open eye. The oracle lay slumped, blood dripping from her mouth. It is done, she rasped. The veil is pierced. Mulan helped her sit upright. What do I do now? The oracle smiled faintly. You gather the dead. They returned to the remnants of the 12th Battalion, only to find the camp in chaos. Half of their soldiers had vanished. The others were raving, eyes rolled back, screaming about black suns and hollow generals. And restrained one long enough for Mulan to speak to him. The gate has teeth, he sobbed. It's eating the sky. General Shen opened it. He used the rites. The fortress is lost. Mulan's blood ran cold. How long ago? 2 days, maybe 3. Time doesn't work right anymore. We tried to stop him, but he doesn't die. Mulan and Ahn exchanged looks. They didn't sleep that night. By dawn, Mulan had made her decision. We head to the Crimson Citadel. That place is myth, Anne said. So are we. The journey was worse than before. Villages they passed were completely silent, not empty, but frozen. People paused mid-motion, mid-bite, mid-blink, mid-step, as if time itself had ceased. One town sat beneath a sun that never moved, casting long, unbroken shadows from unmoving people. In the centre of the square was a single person who did move, a boy with a mirror for a face. When Mulan approached, he whispered, He's building a throne of marrow, and you're already on it. They left in silence. They crossed the Dead Bloom Valley, where red lotuses bloomed from corpses, and the wind carried lullabies in ghostly voices. Mulan slept only once, and dreamed of a wedding, a palace of ivory bones, a groom she couldn't see, but she could smell the rot beneath the perfume. Then, at last, they reached the cliff's edge. There below, half buried in salt and blood, stood the Crimson Citadel. It pulsed, not with firelight, but with something alive. It's breathing, Anne whispered. From this distance, Mulan could make out twisted towers and banners made of flayed skin. The gates were open. There were no guards, just silence. The sky above the citadel was wrong, an inverted colour, more absence than hue. Swirling like a void, Mulan held the oracle's vial of blood tight in one hand. "Shen is inside," she said, "and the god? We'll know soon enough." As they descended, Mulan noticed another version of herself waiting by the gate. This one was weeping. She didn't raise her weapon. She only said, "I already failed." Mulan stepped past her. "I won't." The gates of the Crimson Citadel loomed like the ribs of some vast, buried beast. No sentries stood watch. No war drums beat. Only the throb of something ancient echoed through the stone. A slow, pulsing rhythm, as if the entire fortress were breathing through stone lungs. Mulan stepped through, sword in one hand, the oracle's blood vial in the other. Captain Anne followed silently, every muscle taut beneath her armour. Inside, the halls were lined with red silk and human teeth. The air reeked of honey and rot. The silence was complete. No soldiers, no servants, only footprints, dozens of them, etched into the dust of the crimson floors, and all leading toward the centre of the citadel. Each step they took echoed unnaturally, their footfalls repeating 3 or 4 times, bouncing back from walls that curved inward and whispered back nonsense words in forgotten tongues. At one corridor's end, they found a mural carved in bone. It depicted a woman kneeling beneath a tree, offering her shadow to a many-headed serpent wearing a crown. The woman looked eerily like Mulan. Beneath it, the inscription read, "When the bloodline breaks, the gate will feed." Captain Anne traced the lines with a gloved finger. This place wasn't built, it was summoned. They found the heart of the citadel, past a great iron archway hung with chains. It was a grand chamber, lit by thousands of candles, each flame floating mid-air, unmoving, silent. At the centre stood a wedding altar, draped in funeral silks. A figure awaited her there, not General Shen, a monk, tall and thin, wearing ceremonial red robes, stitched with sigils made of knotted hair. His face was smooth as wax, featureless. He bowed deeply. "The groom awaits. You are late." "I didn't accept any proposal," Mulan replied. The monk smiled without a mouth. "It is not a proposal. It is a blood oath made by your ancestor. You marry not the god, but the war it cannot win without your body." Anne raised her spear. "We're not here for ceremonies." But the monk only gestured calmly to a side door. "There is one more rite. The mirror ritual must be completed before the union. Come, the veil must be peeled clean." Mulan hesitated, then followed. They entered a chamber of black glass. Mirrors lined the walls, each reflecting not her, but versions of her. Some covered in wounds, others weeping, some standing tall with eyes made of fire. A basin stood at the centre of the room, filled with blood and mercury. Above it, a shivering curtain of silver light shimmered. The monk gestured. "Step through, leave your name behind. What returns may not be you, but it will be what is needed." Mulan turned to Anne. "If I don't return, burn this place to the ground. I'll light it with your blood if I have to." Mulan gave a small smile and stepped forward. The mirror veil swallowed her. She emerged into a version of the citadel where time had never moved. The sky above was black glass, stars motionless and wrong. The altar stood empty, But the candles burn blue now, and waiting for her was another Mulan. Not a reflection, not a double, but something more terrifying. This Mulan wore a bride's robe stained in ash and rust. Her face was hidden behind a veil of black teeth strung on thread, and when she spoke, her voice was made of every scream Mulan had ever heard. "I killed the god," it said. "But at what cost?" Mulan asked. "Everything," it replied. "You will too." They circled each other. "I came to complete the seal." "No," said the other. "You came to become the seal." It raised a blade of bone. "You are the last of your line, the final thread. Cut yourself open, and the world lives. Refuse, and it feasts." Mulan stood tall. "I will not be forced." The creature laughed. "Neither was I, and yet here I stand." They fought. Steel against bone, memory against shadow. Each blow Mulan struck rebounded with pain. Her own childhood, her father's tears, the shame of every lie she had told to survive. Her double fought like an echo of fate, inescapable, relentless. Finally, Mulan let go, not of her sword, but of her fear. "I am not her. I am not you." She slashed across the veil of teeth, severing the mask. Beneath it was her own face, tear-streaked, afraid. She plunged her blade into her double's chest. The world shattered into white. She awoke once more on the floor of the mirror chamber. The monk was gone, but the mark on her chest had split open, literally. A glowing crack now ran from her collarbone down her ribs, pulsing with pale light. Captain Anne knelt beside her. "Your eyes, they're different." Mulan stood, steady despite the pain. "They see what must be done." The wedding was prepared in silence. A path of salt and ash led to the altar. The candles now burned green, and there, waiting beside the monk, was the groom, not a man, a figure wrapped in crimson silk, towering and still, its hands too long, its face hidden behind a golden mask, shaped like a skull with many eyes. It did not speak, but it radiated power, the god of war, Xien-lu. Mulan stepped forward, robes billowing, heart steady. The monk began the ritual in the old tongue. As the final words were spoken, the god reached out with a hand that shimmered with flame and bone, and Mulan smiled. She held the vial of Oracle's blood high and shattered it on the altar. The chamber howled. Xien-lu recoiled. The sigil on Mulan's chest burst into light, searing the ground with a perfect circle. Chains of gold flame rose from the bloodied altar, wrapping around the god. Screams echoed, not from the god, but from the walls, the stones, the bones hidden beneath every floor. The citadel itself was alive, and now it was dying. Mulan fell to her knees, the power searing her from within. Captain Anne rushed forward as the citadel began to collapse around them. "We need to go." But Mulan looked up. "I'm not finished yet." The seal had cracked the world. When Mulan shattered the oracle's blood on the altar, something ancient screamed beneath the skin of reality. The crimson citadel trembled, not just with stone or magic, but with the strain of being torn between two realms. Flames erupted from the floor in coiled spirals. Walls bent inward, the air thickened into syrup, blood ran up the stairs instead of down, and yet the god did not fall. Xien-lu, bound in chains of ancestral fire, rose, not with grace, but with force. His golden mask split, revealing a face that was not a face at all, just a void rimmed with teeth and eyes that blinked out of sequence, as if each belonged to a different time. "You think you are sealing me," the god whispered, "but you are birthing me." Captain Anne tried to drag Mulan from the altar. "You said you were ready." "I am," Mulan said, her voice distant, "but sealing the gate, it's not enough. It has to be rebuilt." Xien-lu spoke a word older than the earth. The altar shattered, chains snapped like spiderwebs. The citadel screamed. Mulan was thrown back as the god rose to his full height, now wrapped in tendrils of red lightning. The air vibrated with the memories of every war ever fought, and the smell of iron and regret was unbearable. The citadel began to ascend, spiralling upward into a sky that had no stars, only cracks. Mulan opened her eyes and saw souls, millions, pouring from the citadel's foundations. Soldiers, villagers, ghosts, all trapped in its bones. And now, all freed, they screamed not in pain, but in warning. He was becoming. Mulan forced herself to her feet. The light from the mark on her chest grew blinding, casting shadows in the shapes of her ancestors. One by one, they appeared in a circle around her, flickering outlines in armour, robes, chains. The first Mulan stepped forward, eyes hollowed by sacrifice, mouth stitched with gold thread. She whispered, "We failed to finish it. You must become the lock." Captain Anne was shouting, dragging her toward the exit, but Mulan pulled free. "If I leave, it escapes. If you stay, you die. I died when I put this armour on." She kissed Anne's forehead. "Tell the next generation the truth. Tell them it wasn't glory that saved the world. It was blood." She turned and ran toward the god. The seal ritual had begun. As Mulan approached, the mark on her chest burned through her flesh, searing her ribs with holy fire. Her blood hit the floor in drops that ignited in bursts of white. Xien-lu laughed. "You think they haven't tried before? You think I fear one more little girl with a sword?" Mulan smiled through the pain. "No, but you fear your reflection." From her belt, she drew the black mirror. It no longer showed her face, only his. And for the first time, the god recoiled. She hurled the mirror into his chest. Light erupted, but not light like fire or the sun. This was ancestral light, made of memories, names, and the bones of the unburied. It burned through Xien-lu's form like rot through silk, unravelling his many arms, his crowned skull, his tongue made of ash. He screamed in every voice she had ever heard. Then he began to collapse inward. The citadel split open like a dying flower. Reality twisted around him, forming a vortex, a spiral gate, and standing at its threshold was General Shen. He looked different now, no longer human. His armour was cracked and bleeding, his mouth full of sigils, his eyes pitch black. He held a severed head in one hand. "Foolish girl," he spat. "I didn't summon Xien-lu to destroy the world." He dropped the head. It was his own. "I summoned him to replace it." Mulan gritted her teeth. "You're already dead. So are you," he said. They clashed, her blade against a spear made from bone and time. Sparks flew in the colour of sorrow. Their fight moved through rooms that weren't rooms, slices of memory, each more fractured than the last. A dinner table where her father choked on ink, a wedding hall filled with bleeding statues, a field where every corpse wore her face. Shen struck hard, piercing her side. "You could have ruled. You could have burned it clean." She answered by driving her sword through his throat. He fell with a look not of rage, but regret. "I wanted to fix it." Mulan turned to the collapsing vortex. The gate was still open. The god, shattered but not erased, still stirred within the spiral. She understood then. To seal the gate forever, it needed a soul, a living soul, bound by choice. She stepped forward. Captain Ahn screamed her name from behind, but didn't follow. She knew better. Mulan walked into the gate. It closed behind her. The world shuddered, and then was still. The Crimson Citadel collapsed in silence. No explosion, no final scream, only the wind and the faint sound of a mirror cracking. Elsewhere, children told stories of a soldier who walked the border between worlds, a woman in red who appeared when spirits grew restless, who stood watch over the veils of the living and the dead. They say she has no face, only a mirror, and in it you see what you're most afraid to become. Mulan remembered nothing of the moment the gate closed behind her. Only the cold, not the cold of winter, or wind, or death, but the cold of absence, the kind that comes when even the concept of warmth has been erased. She floated in a void between worlds. Around her drifted the remnants of the war god, fragments of antlered bone, threads of silk that hissed and coiled, and eyes not watching her, but remembering her. And yet she was alive, bound, not broken. The mark on her chest no longer burned. It pulsed in time with something deeper. Then came the voice, soft, intimate. It didn't echo, it simply was. "You married me, little flame. Now come see our home." When she awoke, she was standing in a palace of smoke and bone. A throne of swords loomed at the end of the hall, its steps slick with blood that refused to fall downward, running in defiance of gravity. Banners stitched from the flesh of kings fluttered in unfelt wind. Chandeliers dangled with tongues instead of crystals. And down the aisle, an altar, laid in perfect symmetry, dressed in crimson veils and bound in gold thread, her wedding gown. The voice returned. "You crossed the veil, you sealed the gate, but sealing is not destruction, it is union." Mulan turned slowly, and there stood the groom, Xien-lu, god of war, unbound from form, wore a body of memories, shifting constantly between the faces of her ancestors, her enemies, her own reflection. He bowed. "You are not a prisoner here. You are my bride and my prison." She drew her sword. He laughed gently. "That won't work here. You are as much a part of me now as I am of you." The sword turned to ash in her hands. Time passed, though it didn't flow. In this place, the sealed realm, She wandered across fields of shadow, where the stars were eyes and the mountains wept songs. She crossed bridges made of prayers, walked among beasts that once ruled forgotten empires. And everywhere she went, the god followed, never threatening, never pleading, simply there. "You don't understand what you've done," he said, "one cycle. You sealed a piece of me, yes, but you also sealed your world's war." "No more gods will come through," Mulan said. "No more peace either. I was the balance. Now the dead linger. You have traded blood for silence." She ignored him. He changed tactics. In the 7th cycle, he brought her gifts. A table set for 2. Her father's favourite meal, steaming though there was no fire. A comb her mother once used. A mirror that reflected only her corpse. "You remember love," he said. "I remember its price. That is why you fascinate me." Then came the dream, a battlefield, not of the past, but the future. The world she left behind, untouched by war, but rotting with apathy. Spirits uncrossed, children born without names, cities where no one remembered why they mourned. Because without war, nothing grew. Without death, there was no story. "You removed the blade from the body," Xien-lu whispered. "Now the wound festers." Mulan awoke screaming, and there he was, seated beside her on a throne of withered time. "You see it now, don't you? You are not my captor. You are my mirror." She rose. "If that's true, then let me choose how I reflect you." She walked to the altar. This time she donned the gown herself. The god knelt, and she placed her mark, the open eye, on his brow. The palace shuddered. The chains that bound him rewove into rings, not of captivity, but of covenant. She spoke the words of the mirror rite in full this time, not just as a ward, but as a vow. "I will hold your hunger. I will bind your war. I will wear the blade not as weapon, but as warning." The god said nothing. He wept, and when the final word was spoken, the palace sealed shut, not as a tomb, but as a temple. Elsewhere, Captain Anne stood atop a lonely hill. Behind her, the last remnants of the Crimson Citadel burned into cinders. In her hands, she held Mulan's sword, now split down the middle, forever inert. But beside it lay something new, a flower made of glass. It pulsed with light. She smiled. "I'll tell them," she said, "all of it." The temple of smoke and bone stood silent, sealed at the end of the world. Inside, Mulan knelt at the altar of shattered mirrors. The pieces no longer reflected her face, but memories, some hers, others older than time, moments stitched together by blood and war. A girl placing armour over her father's wounds, a mother weeping alone under a dying cherry tree, a soldier walking into a collapsing fortress, alone and uncelebrated. This was not the past. This was inheritance. The realm she had sealed herself into. The sealed domain, the hollow between gods and graves, was neither heaven nor hell. It was a scar, stitched with willpower and forgotten names. And now she was its guardian. In the distance, the god Xien-lu stirred. He no longer stood tall or burning. He had folded in on himself, no longer a warlord of bone and flame, but a smouldering presence wrapped in threadbare glory. He wore the faces of history like tattered robes, shifting constantly between tyrants and martyrs, sometimes showing hers. He said nothing, but she felt his hunger. Even bound by the mirror rite, gods never truly slept. Mulan rose slowly from the altar, her gown stitched from crimson veil, and ancestral ash fluttered without wind. In this realm, her body was preserved, but not unchanged. The sigil burned faintly on her chest, now etched into her bones. Her blood no longer beat in her veins, but circled the temple like mist. She had become the lock, the seal, the knife edge between peace and ruin. But memory haunted her more than the god ever could. She often heard footsteps, echoes from the past, or futures that would never come. On the fourth cycle of silence, she wandered past the temple's edge, where the mirror field bloomed, thousands of suspended shards, each showing a different truth. In one shard, she saw Captain Anne sitting alone by a grave marked only with a red flower. In another, she saw the empire rebuilding, walls repaired, cities singing, but the skies remained overcast, as if the sun too had gone into mourning. And in the darkest shard, she saw herself, older, hollowed, still watching, long after the last soul had spoken her name. She spoke aloud for the first time in many cycles. Is this what peace feels like? From behind her, Xien-lu's voice coiled through the air like incense smoke. Peace is merely the shape of war forgotten. She turned. The god stood at the threshold of the mirrors, not in defiance, but observation. His face was blank, formless, as if still trying to decide who he needed to be. I see you've made this place yours, he said. I made it so you wouldn't make it yours. He smiled with no warmth. Yet here we are, both gods now, in our own ways. Mulan didn't respond. Later, she returned to the central hall and etched another rune into the floor. One more layer of the rite, one more wall between the god and the world he once devoured. Each mark pulled at her marrow. Her strength, once physical, now came in strange bursts. When she remembered her mother's lullabies, her father's steady breath, the sound of a blade sliding from its sheath. Every time she remembered love, she endured. But memory has weight, and she was starting to bend. One cycle, she dreamed of snow, not the cursed snow of war, but the soft kind, gentle, real. She stood in a courtyard, surrounded by plum blossoms. Children played with wooden swords. One boy wore her old armour. A girl mimicked her fighting stance badly. And there, by the gate, stood her father. He looked young again. He smiled, not in pride, but in peace. I'm sorry, she whispered. He shook his head. You did what we never could. You chose what others feared. You became more than legend. He stepped forward and kissed her forehead. Let go, Hua Mulan. She awoke weeping. The tears became smoke, and the smoke formed a mirror. In it, for the first time, she saw herself as she was now. Not a soldier, not a bride, a sentinel, a soul woven into the fabric of a forgotten god's prison. And it was not ugly, it was beautiful. Terrible, yes, but sacred. Centuries passed. or hours. Time had no rule here. Outside, the world changed. She knew because the mirrors shifted, reflections of technologies she did not understand. Floating cities, skyships, temples turned to marketplaces, language bending and breaking. Yet always a shrine remained, sometimes hidden, sometimes forgotten, but always tended. A blade laid in the centre, her blade, and on the altar a name carved in a language long dead, the last watcher. Eventually she was not alone. She felt it before she saw it. A tear in the mirror field, a passage, clumsy, unnatural, ripped through by someone who did not belong. She followed the sound. There, amid a web of bleeding glass and ancestral threads, stood a girl, young, eyes wide, heart strong. She wore crimson cloth and bore the same mark upon her chest. Faint, undeveloped, she turned and bowed. Mulan! Mulan tilted her head. The girl smiled, nervous. I don't know how I found you, only that I was told to follow the mirrors. Mulan spoke gently. Her voice sounded older now, but steady. You are lost. I was, but I think maybe I'm supposed to help you, or maybe learn from you. The god stirred in the distance. His voice thundered even through chains. Another seal or a crack? Mulan raised a hand. The mirrors around them quieted. She looked at the girl, not with recognition, but hope. You came because you heard the story. Yes, then tell it. They sat together, cross-legged, on the mirrored floor, and Mulan listened as the girl spoke of the outer world, of the shrines, of the fading stories, of how, in the darkest winters, mothers told their children that there was a woman beyond the veil who watched over them, who walked between monsters and mortals, who wore no crown, but carried a sword forged from sacrifice. They called her many names, but all of them meant the same thing. The one who chose silence over screams, and for the first time in 1,000 cycles, Mulan smiled, because now she was not just memory, she was myth. She had endured long enough to be reborn through story, not as a warrior, but as a warning, as a watcher, and in a temple of bone and smoke, sealed beyond the reach of gods and kings. Mulan whispered one final prayer into the mirror. Let them remember not what I fought, but what I spared them from becoming.